Good morning, everybody. How are we? I'm sure more people will be joining us once they see the time. It sneaks up on us on a Sunday morning, doesn't it? Very sneaky. How are we? 12th of July already. Can't believe it. Now, you might find that, obviously, I'll give you the usual 10 to 15 minutes to sketch out if you haven't already. But what you might find is I've actually cheated and I've got a little bit of a gap in the wall here. I've made a doorway that doesn't exist, and the reason for that is just so it flows. The eye can flow through much easier than it being an actual. Because as an actual wall stops you from getting through, in art, an actual wall stops the eye from getting through. So in fact, it makes two separate pictures, which we don't want. So by creating that little gap in the wall just off centre, could either be there or it could be there, doesn't really matter. Just makes it a little bit more pleasing to the composition. And in fact, I might add a little shape up here, just there. One on, we'll have another one here. To lead the eye through and round. Oh, just throwing my pencil across the classroom. So how are we this morning? I think it's such a lovely day. Most people are probably in the garden. But, you know. Let's get some bird song on. It might be that some are struggling to get on. Oh, it's all right. It's a bit hectic. It's a bit hectic because we've only got, it's only me and Jackie now, so trying to balance and juggle everything. And you know, the shop is quieter. But we're having to spend a lot more money on stock to allow for the online shop and the real life shop now both are open and running. So it's just getting used to new things, you know. New ways. Good morning, Alison. Yeah, just getting used to new ways of doing things, and this new normal that we've got to try and juggle. So yeah, it's interesting. Something new to get your teeth into, that's for sure. I've chosen deliberately, it took me a long time. I had about 15 photos of Broadway Tower to choose to try and get the more unusual one, because everybody has the same scene of Broadway Tower on the hill and all of that kind of thing. So I thought this one shows a little bit of the height and the scale and something more interesting. So we'll have until 1:45 so you can sketch it all out, and then we'll start painting and I'll talk through the colours and what have you later on. I don't know if I've got my tower a bit fat. I don't know if it should be a bit thinner. I'm going to keep it like that since I've drawn it, but it looks a lot thinner on the photo. It's a gorgeous day, isn't it? 18 degrees it said as I was driving in this morning, which is a Lovely, really lovely. Just getting a few people who need to get on because it's their first lesson. So let's see if we can help them on. My hay fever's quite bad today. I couldn't work out this morning if I'd got a cold or if it was my hay fever. I think it's my hay fever. Excuse my arm, sorry. Biscuit supplies aren't too bad because Jackie's back at work now, so she's keeping me in supplies of biscuits because I'm not at home, I'm at the shop today. So the biscuits are right. Yeah, Alison, I was just talking about that just before you logged on actually. I should have waited before I got too excited. I've added the gate only because it can either go there or there. Because it leads the eye through, whereas the actual real wall stops the sheep or visitors getting across. A painted wall does exactly the same thing with the composition. What would happen is your eyes would look around here, then they'd stop, then they'd jump, and they'd look around here. Whereas with the gate, it allows the eye to travel through a little bit more. It's just a sneaky little compositional device. But you don't want it smack bang in the middle. There or there would work. I've added a couple of extra sheep to lead the eye through, just to make it a bit more interesting. I'll run through the colours again later. So yeah, sneaky. But it works. You don't have to put it in. It's optional. But I feel if I just put a hint of bluey hills behind, just in the gap, it'll help. There's 5 of you. Lovely. Yeah, I've actually got a couple of those Lotus Biscoff biscuits at the moment. That'll be for later. There's some chocolate digestives knocking about, but Jackie tends to bring some biscuits in every week. So while we're going through the online orders, we can have a cup of tea and a biscuit, which is nice. Gotta have biscuits, haven't you? It's what gets you through life. Here's a biscuit. I just can't believe how sunny it is today. I don't know why, because we're in the middle of summer, really, so it should be nice and hot, but yeah, it's nice. I'll jump onto Discord in 1 minute. I've just got the phone plugged in because the charge had run down quite substantially because I didn't use it for the last couple of days. So anybody that's on Discord, I will be on there in a minute. If anybody is on Discord, I don't know. Have any of you been to Broadway Tower recently? I have to admit I haven't. It's somewhere I want to go. Oh, Alison, you're on Discord. Hello, Alison. So five minutes to draw. Let me know when you've drawn though, so then I can tell. So if you say drawn, you can we can move on probably a little bit quicker. Oh, I can, Alison. Hello. You're very quiet, but I can hear you. Hang on, let me turn your volume up. I think I can do that. There you go. Hello, Alison. We've not spoken in real life before, have we? No, this is it. I had somebody come in the shop the other day, and I hadn't got a clue who they were, but they've been coming to my online classes for ages. But because you never see faces or anything, you just don't know who people are. So it's quite nice to hear voices and see faces and all that kind of thing. There is, yeah. So you either have to choose one or the other, or unless you like prompting a lot, you do get a delay. Sometimes, depending on the Wi-Fi, there can be up to a minute's delay. So when I say I'm doing this now, you'll hear me say it in real time, but you won't see it for a while. But it gives you time to be prepared. That's all right, Alison. Oh yes, I remember you said you were watching. Yes, I've got 2 Alisons today. Well, they may not look like sheep at all, Miriam. I mean, mine really look like little hippos, really, this morning, but they'll be like white hippos, so we'll be fine. We'll be fine. I'm just going to rub out. So the colours really are quite limited in terms of, we've got ultramarine, yellow ochre, lemon yellow, burnt sienna, and cadmium red. I'm going to move my putty rubber because it's going to fall into my coffee cup if I leave it there. So yeah, lots of different things. We're not going to use any masking tape or anything. We're just going to try and be skillful with our watercolour brushes. So that's going to be fun. Yeah, I'll be using my normal my number 3. So I've got my pointed round brush, my small number 4, and my detail number 1 brush. Well, I've got to say these are back in stock again. We keep selling out, but they are back in stock. They're long term out of stock of the number 4 squirrels, which is what I'm using, and and the replacement squirrels they're also out of stock of. So I've ordered the number 2 squirrels, which are just slightly smaller. It's very hard to distinguish between the two. So we've got those back in stock on our Shop Happy page. The price of squirrels have shot up anyway, so actually the size 2 means that we can keep the price lower on our special offer for those 3 brushes. But yeah, the price of squirrel hair has gone up exponentially in the last 2 years. I worked out that I've had my squirrel brush for 2 years, and when I had it, it was $19.99. They're now $32.99, which is a huge increase. So by getting the size 2 on offer instead of the number 4, we've managed to keep the costs down fairly well. But they're lovely. I mean, obviously, if for this to have lasted, if you work out how many classes I do a week in watercolour, then times it by 2 years, and I'm still using it, actually I'm getting really good value for money. So it's all much of a muchness, really. What does it say? Buy cheap, buy twice. All of that stuff. Right. So I'm gonna keep the Stuck Guide quite stormy. It's one of those days where you've had that rain and then the sun comes out and everything's so much more brighter and pretty. So I'm gonna give the sky a good wetting. I'm not gonna bathe it, but I am gonna make it quite wet. Depends how warm it is where you're working. And actually the classroom's quite warm. All of the colours, Philippa, absolutely. Burnt sienna, ultramarine, yellow ochre, lemon yellow, and cadmium red. I don't think I've missed any, but the sky we're going to be using mixes of ultramarine, burnt sienna and cadmium red. So we've got greys, blues and purples. The purple just lifts it up a little bit and stops it from being so severe and dull. We don't want a dull picture. It's a nice day outside. So if I do my ultramarine on my tile, I've tweaked the camera so you can actually see the brush from 2 angles, which might help you. I don't know, because normally it's just on the palette, but because this is portrait. Plus I was teaching the calligraphy class yesterday morning, and it was good to have the camera on 2 angles so people could see how the nib sat. And then I'm just going to drop it and let it spread. Oh, I just love the way watercolour spreads. It still excites me. I think it's amazing. Just got to be a little bit more careful around the tower. So I've got little bits of colour here, and then I'll drop in maybe a bit more blue or a bit more brown. I don't know, maybe I'll add a bit of red. Just play around with your blues, your browns and your greys. You don't want it totally dominating, and leave some areas of white, but let the colour spread and move around. No, I haven't gone for a bright purple. It's very hard to distinguish between the two. It just warms it up a little bit. Maybe I could add a bit more red in there. I don't know. Might add a bit of could even add a bit of yellow ochre in this sky, which would sort of, you know, in the white gaps if you have a tiny bit of yellow ochre. We don't use very, well, I say we, I don't use very much yellow ochre in pictures. And there's absolutely no reason for that, except generally I can mix the colour similar to yellow ochre with other colours that I might be using in the palette. But because this is sort of like Cotswold stone in colour, it's good to use an ochre, which is the basis of a Cotswold stone. We want it quite exciting, because the structure in itself is quite simplified. I've got there Miriam, I've got ultramarine, and I've mixed it with burnt sienna for some bits and cadmium red for other bits. And then I'm dropping in little bits of yellow ochre just randomly, just to warm the sky up a little bit, make it a little bit more exciting and dramatic. I could, if I wanted, make a much darker grey if I wanted to go a little bit more umphy with a bit more blue and brown. Let's try that further up here, just to while the paper's wet. Once it starts to dry, that's where it gets a little bit iffy and cauliflowers occur, if you don't like cauliflowers. Oh, what's the dog called, Alison? Oh no, what paper have you got? Okay, is it a cotton rag or a wood pulp rag? Oh, okay, yeah, you're going to need loads of water with that, because it takes quite a bit to so a cotton rag paper is quite tricky, because you need it wet enough to start absorbing and doing stuff, but because it's cotton, it retains the moisture a lot more, so it takes longer to dry. Yes. Yeah, I know. You see, we have practice paper pads, but they tend to be a lighter weight than standard watercolor, which is brilliant for practicing. But like with everything, with all practice paper, when you actually get to do, yeah, and when you get to do the real thing, it's very different to the actual paper. So I just make sure I've got decentish paper, and I know I can use both sides. And in fact, nearly all of my paintings, for watercolors, I use both sides of the paper, um, just to make it more cost effective. So you can see there's areas there that are still quite shiny, that are reflecting the light. I have got some cauliflowers, but I'm not going to worry actually, because it's quite interesting. to dry. In fact, the yellow ochre has become quite dominant now in that, so actually it's working out quite nicely. I might have to get the hairdryer on it shortly, but we'll see. In fact, I might use a small brush and just, while that's drying, blob my sheep in a very pale yellow ochre to get them primed and ready for later on. My little cream hippopotami. Right, I'm going to get a massive cauliflower. Let me just grab the hairdryer for a second. Excuse the noise. I'm annoyed about this little cauliflower here, so I'm just going to dampen a brush and soften the edge just to get rid of it. That's better. Now, if you have done a gap in the wall, all I'm going to do is go with ultramarine and a tiny weeny bit of yellow, lemon yellow, just to give me this misty land, sort of a teal colour. So it will hopefully help bring the eye through when we do everything else. But we'll let everything dry. It's only not even 11 o'clock yet. We're doing really well. See, I love wet in wet skies because you don't actually know. And if I did this painting again in a minute, I still wouldn't get the same effect. And that's what I love about it. So we might do some washes. Yeah, I've just put a very, very light yellow ochre on the sheep just to warm them up a little bit. They're not going to be finished, obviously, because we'll put shadows and stuff on when we do that. So I just wanted them there while I'd got a little bit of yellow ochre, and then I'll start adding in a minute when I'm confident that it's dry, the tower and the wall in a slightly stronger yellow ochre wash, just to, apart from the windows, just to start getting all the basics on. What other class were you in, Alison? I can't remember. Right, if I go, oh, see, I am going to go with my bigger brush for this, ochre, stronger ochre wash, but it's always a bit scary. Ah, yes, you're the photo scientist. Excellent. I didn't put you off there. No, it looked lovely. Absolutely. See, I would have normally used carmine, which is a nice pinky red, but I'd got the tube of crimson out, so I thought I'd just use that. But yeah, I think carmine opera rose would have. Yes. So this is just neat yellow ochre. I'm probably missing a few bits out, trying to be careful around the windows. So this is a much stronger colour than the sheep. I'll go with you as well when we I'll go through how to get distance and depth in this foreground area, because it is just one. Generally it's nice to have 2 or 3 layers of land, 2 or 3 planes of land, but obviously here we haven't got that. We've only got the tower plus the foreground, so I'll show you how we can manipulate colours. And use them to our advantage to give us extra depth. But I enjoy just blocking in the colour to start with, and then we can build it up from there. Alison, a good question. How do I choose the image for all of our lessons? I use lots of reference sites or do montages. So if I can't find exactly the picture that I want, then I will Photoshop certain elements together to make them work, which I do in quite a few classes. I haven't done it on this one though. So I'm often inspired by something because of these lessons that we're doing now. I'd planned back in January, so because we like to release the catalogue with all of our classes in at least 2 months before the actual date of them. So a lot of the times, the images that I thought I had on my computer, I can never find, so then I have to find other versions of them. But I just try to keep them varied, really. We do, I don't know, about between 8 and 10 classes a week. So sometimes I might do an image in several classes, but they're all different. So like an acrylic class, a drawing class, and a watercolour class, I use the same image for, because they're very different ways of doing it. So even if I've got the same students on those, it's a totally different way of working and doing the composition and the tone and all of that kind of thing. But with the watercolour classes, I know I have some people that come on a Sunday who also come on a Monday or a Thursday, so I don't want to repeat those, so they don't get bored. And in fact, I've never in 10 years repeated the same photograph in the same class, which I'm running out of things now, so it might start having a bit of repetition for some of my longer standing students, but hopefully they'll be able to, if they've still got their first one, they can compare and see how different it looks, and hopefully they've got better. So I try to mix it up, really. So I try to get some animals, some landscape, some building, some floral in every single class if I can. The monthly ones are a little bit tricky because I only get six sessions. But also, if I do get a lot of students asking me to do a certain thing, then I will do a class on it. So get your requests in now, ready for the January to June classes, because I'll be starting planning those soon. It's a full-on, it's almost a full-time job just planning the lessons, let alone planning them and teaching them, and then doing all the other things that we do with the online shop, the real life shop, and the demos and all that kind of stuff. I have got a bit more free time now. I say free time because I'm not obviously doing any talks or demonstrations to different art groups because they're all not meeting. A Christmas card. Oh yeah, we can do one. Now let me just have a quick look see. Yeah, we'd have to do those in a November or something, wouldn't we? But oh, actually, the October the 11th, we can do it as a Christmassy card because it's a frosty New Forest with a horse, so it's got a bit of a snowy theme to it. But we can do that as a card, and I can show you some techniques to make it exciting. I normally do Christmas themes, but you see, we've got a snowy mountain on my birthday on the Sunday in December, but I'll be too late for Christmas cards, won't it, on the 13th? But hopefully society will be slightly more normal by then, so at least you can visit family as well as send cards. But who knows? Right, I'm just letting that dry. I'm going to put a wash for the grass in a minute. And show you how to get the two tones. Because the shadows, as we know, and as we've done before, we'll put the shadows on afterwards. Oh, is it your birthday today, Miriam? You'll have to let us know. Thank you. happy birthday. How lovely that you've decided to spend your birthday doing a class with us. And I'll be doing the same in December. So happy birthday to you, Miriam. See, we'd have had cake if we were in real life. Never mind. I won't post it out to you. Okay, so if we've got to go around the sheep, but that's not so much an issue. If I do lemon yellow and ultramarine, quite lemony. He says, and adds too much ultramarine. This is lemon yellow and a little bit of ultramarine. I've got to go around my sheep. But fortunately the sheep have got shadows when we get round to that part, so at least if you're not fully right up to them, and using this big brush it is a bit difficult. But if I used a smaller brush, you can guarantee that it would keep drying too quickly and I wouldn't get there. We've got quite a lot of interest for our free paint along session later this month already. I only posted it yesterday. It's moon gazing hair in watercolour, and I think there's already over 100 people interested, which is quite phenomenal for us because we are such a tiny room and a tiny shop. It's really nice. It's nice though. I'm not moaning. See, look, I've had to mix up a new colour, and it's a little bit more green than the previous one. So I need to sort of block it in. And now I need to make sure I don't run out of this new colour, because otherwise what I'm going to be doing is just mixing colour to join up. One I'm just painting around at this minute does look so much like a hippo, it's unbelievable. I'm sure it won't apply to any of you, however the tattoo studio is very excited upstairs because he's excited that he can finally open from tomorrow. His phone's been non-stop with people wanting to get their tattoos ready for holidays and stuff, so he's been very excited about it. Right, so we've got that base colour on, and then that needs to dry, and then I'll show you how to get a bit more depth in the foreground. Well, I'd have probably bought cake as well, you see, Miriam, so we'd have had double the cake. And then we might have had chopsies from the cafe downstairs, because I said about the class, and then we realised that there was no students here, and I wasn't going to be able to eat all of the pastries and the brownie and everything, so yeah, it's difficult. So I'm missing out on all the cake here and all the nice stuff from the cafe. And they're in sorting stuff out, so I can't nick any either today. I've actually managed to successfully grow peas in the garden. Or beans. I don't know what they are. I think they're peas because they're the little white flowers rather than the red flowers. I've got the runny beans started, but they're not doing anything yet. Carrots and leeks are an absolute failure again for the third year in a row. I don't know what I'm doing wrong with those. Maybe I've not got the right soil. I don't know. And I think potatoes will be alright. I'm having to do everything in pots and troughs because I haven't got a garden. My whole garden's only about 5 foot square. But I'll make sure I'll get those pea things ready. Harvest those with excitement. I thought I was going to be self-sustainable, but I've only got 2 pods, so that's not going to go very far, is it? Got tomatoes coming up as well. Right, so that's nearly dryish, a little bit. Yeah. So what I want to do is I'm going to use yellow ochre and a little bit of ultramarine, and that's going to go a little bit sludgier. You could add a little bit of lemon yellow in there as well. And basically what that will do is it will warm. Oh, that's my. Oh no, I'm going to stick to that. A bit more yellow. And I'm just going to put that in the foreground, and it doesn't look as vibrant. So this is yellow ochre, a bit of lemon yellow, and a little bit of ultramarine. It doesn't look as vibrant, but the warmer colours, which tend to be in this instance a little bit more earthy, help to create an additional layer and a bit more depth. If I just dampen my brush to lighten where that meets the other green. We'll put texture on and everything, but this is just to create a second layer. Was I supposed to water them a lot or not a lot? Because I think I was just doing them when I remembered. But I was using normal soil, don't they prefer sandy soil? I'm not, you see, I'm not really a gardener, but I just like the idea of trying. So before, what we'll probably do is we'll let this dry, and it's 20 past 11, so it is coffee break time. We'll let it all dry, then we'll work on the stone work of the tower and the walls, and then we'll start adding a bit more texture and foliage and that kind of thing. And see how it goes. So now is a good time, if you need to pop the kettle on, to go and do it. I will most certainly be going to do that now. Remove my earpiece. biscuit there. I am back, but I'll give you another minute just in case you're not. I've got a super speedy kettle here. I'll try. I'm not going to give up with carrots. I'll try again later. I'll do some more. Right. Let me get the hairdryer. Is it dry enough for me to lean on? Probably not. Right, so I'll probably be using my number 4 round brush next. So with the sort of Cotswold stone, it's very different, and it can tend to take more of a greeny grey. I haven't got it with me, but normally I've got how the Cotswold stone or ochre stone grows. You've got the main stone that we use for building. Then on top of that you have a green stone. And then on top of that you have a grey mud, and then it grows in a seam on top of that again with the ochre stone, then the green stone, then the but the green stone tends to not be used as much. But it has got more of a green tinge to it, because obviously yellow ochre paint is not necessarily now made from the actual stone. It's chemically produced. So if we use yellow ochre, add a tiny bit of ultramarine, always end up too much. So it goes more of a brown than a green. You can add a little bit of cadmium red in there as well, and if you don't mix it up thoroughly, it works really nicely. And even a bit of burnt sienna if you want to darken it even more. And this should help, because there's no, although the light's quite strong, you can see from the shadows that it's kind of done on midday, which is where the sun is right above the objects, so the shadows are short and directly beneath, which means there is no light projecting onto the sides of this building, it's above it. But we can still play with that. So I'm going to use this browny greeny grey mix, and I'm going to sort of start going round parts of it to bring each layer forward. So on this one I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do the same on this side, and then clean the brush and use a clean damp brush to soften it into the rest of the tower. Not worrying about the base just yet. And you can add as much detail as you like. I'm probably not going to add loads because I'm a coward. But it does also depend on time. So if we can get a darker edge, and then I'm going to do the same with the middle tower, but I'm going to put it on both sides. And then clean damp brush to blend it, and it might just make it look a little bit more three-dimensional. Might go even darker than this later. But you got to start somewhere, haven't you? And maybe a little bit under the crenellations in this area here. And around the windows. So this is the thing when you're trying to build up under the balcony as well, just so it starts to have things come forward and around. But we'll do some quite strong shadow on these when we get to it, but we'll do all the shadow together, I think. But as watercolours are nice and transparent, it means you can use the same colour over the top of the same colour when it dries, and it will give you a slightly darker tone. So I'll be using my flat brush just to indicate some stone shapes, but again, I do not want to go mad and paint the whole tower in stones individually, but just a little drag of the brush will make a difference, so it will feel more like it's stone. And then when we do shading, keep it to this number 4 round brush width, it means I'm just trying not to do too much in the way of detail, but enough. I think we'll put some different coloured stones in here as well, but because I still want to go darker. You know me, I like the drama. Ooh, now, if you're like me and you've still got a bit of your purple sky colour, you can drag some of your ochre in there and that'll be the perfect darker tone. If not, you could just add a bit more blue and brown to the ochre that you've already got. Because the tower is the focal point, even though it's sort of furthest away from us. But it is so easy to become carried away and absorbed in the rocks and stones that before you know it, you've done it all. And then you're a bit disappointed in yourself. You know, when you get a family block of chocolate out just to have a few bits, and then you eat it all because it's there, and then you get so annoyed at yourself because the next night you actually wish you'd have saved some because you wanted some more. It's a bit like that. And this more grey tone I'm going to use for the base. Little shorter strokes. But you see, I want the wall to stand proud, the lower wall that goes across the length of the picture. So I'm going to do a bit of ochre bit with that as well. It's all about being an indication rather than a exact copy. Because we've got a photograph here, we don't need to stress too much about it. greyer or darker towards the base of the wall. So we're starting to build up the depth. It's still not as deep as I want it to be, but I'm going to do more when we mix the shadow colour, so we can do the inside of the windows. That's going to be a little bit fiddly, and other shady bits. I'm tempted to add a little bit more now, but I don't know. Especially down the bottom bit of that. Tower area. Yeah, that'll do. Mix up some more of that grey. I just want to make the wall stand proud, you see. So I've got here just I thought I was mixing the same colour, but it's actually a little bit darker, and it's a bit more ultramarine and burnt sienna with some yellow ochre, and that's just helping to bring certain aspects forward. And if you made a drink, don't forget that was about 20 minutes ago, so it'll start going cold. But a lot will change once the shadows are in, which are going to be more purple. However, I do want to get a bit of texture in the grass first, and we've got quite a lot of time left, so there's no rush at all. Could even do a bit of dry brush work on this wall. So dry brush, if you remember, is where the brush is just slightly damp and the paint is slightly damp, and I'm just bouncing it on to get a little bit of extra texture. You could do it on the tower as well if you wanted to. Depends how much texture you want to create. You can hear how dry it is on the mic's picking it up. birdsong's finished. Again, I thought it was really quiet. Let's pop some back on again. So it's always good to let certain things dry. That's the I think that's the downside. If you're slightly impatient with watercolour, it's letting things dry. Otherwise, you end up lifting off more than you want to, and then you get annoyed. And because it's not until it starts to dry that you get a really good indication of the colour tone, because as we say, it dries 30% lighter, so you start to see the tone for what it really is. I'm quite lucky because I can see it on a small screen at the same time, so I can see how it's working. But you know, there's nothing wrong. Depends what you're watching this on. If you've got your smartphone or tablet free, take a photograph of it so you can see it in a smaller scale, and it does make your work look a lot better than you might think it is. I want to put a bit of texture in the grass, really, and you can do that. Depends what brushes you've got. If you've got a hog bristle or a fan brush or an old flat brush that I mean, you can use a squirrel brush if you want, but I've got a nice old, I use it for acrylics as well, but it's a nice old flat brush that's splayed, and that's quite nice for stippling on. A stipple brush works quite well, or a an old stencil brush, anything that you've got you can add a bit of texture to. That I'm not going to use that colour to mix, I'm going to use that colour to apply, so I'll use the round brush to mix. I was expecting a heaving class today because there was loads of people that are booked on, but maybe they're all going to watch and join in later. They're making the most of the sunshine first. So let me go with some lemon yellow. I'm mixing it on this sludgy green, so it's not going to be as vibrant. A bit of ultramarine. And maybe either a bit of cadmium red or a bit of burnt sienna, just to dull it down a fraction. And let's see how that looks. So I don't, this is a really dry brush. I do need to dampen it first, because if I use it dry, what will happen is it will suck up all of the paint but not distribute any of it. So this way I'm hopeful that I can just lightly tap. And in the distance, you see, this colour is just subtle enough. But if it depends if you've got a square-ended brush or not. Don't be frightened to twist it as you dab, even if it's just a slight rock between finger and thumb. Now what that will do is it will just generate a slightly different look, so it doesn't look like you've printed. Now I know we're going to put lots of trees and things on here. Whether I'll put as many trees as there are in the photograph will remain to be seen. Depends how much I can, or how happy I am with the actual picture. And then I'll go, no, let's paint over all of this with foliage. I might do some neat lemon yellow on here as well, just to brighten some areas up when it's dry, but we'll see. And if you haven't got any of that, you can always use a bit of a dry brush method to get the textured grass. But doing it this way tends to dry a lot quicker. Let's try a bit more lemon yellow. And it depends on the quality of your paints. The lemon yellow might be a little bit more opaque, so it will stand out nicely. There are fun things you can do with watercolours. You can always add a bit of white gouache to them as well, and that will give you a different look. It will make them slightly more chalky and more opaque, but it will give you a lot more versatility than buying a whole set of good quality gouache paints. Just buy good quality white gouache and you can be like they used to do in the Elizabethan period and tint your watercolours with white gouache. So I'm just using a little bit of lemon yellow over the top of some of this just to get that summery feel, and it'll help when I do the darker trees, which are almost dark olive green to black really. Right, don't want to do too much with this because it is further away, but it has helped a lot. And then we'll do maybe a slightly darker green from lemon yellow, yellow ochre and ultramarine just in the foreground, stippling, because we want to bring that closer to us as well. Maybe a little bit more blue. And do a bit more flicks. Depends how strong or long you want the grass to be. Obviously I don't want these to look like midget hippos. I do want them to look like sheep. So never throw your, well, I say never throw your old brushes away. I am terrible at keeping old brushes because I always think they'll come in handy for something. I've got loads of brushes that really should be thrown away. Same as keeping boxes and packaging, because you just... I saw, I think it was on TikTok, somebody saying that what people don't realise, that a majority of being an adult is debating with yourselves which boxes to keep and which boxes to throw away when you buy things. And I thought that's very true. It is for me anyway. We get lots of boxes for deliveries and We do reuse a lot of our packaging, and nearly all of our packaging we reuse when we're posting our online shop stuff, because we're posting all across the UK now, which is really lovely to have so many people supporting us. And we're trialling free postage and packaging. I might go slightly darker with a bit more blue now. Oh, that's a lot more blue. But it's nice to build up texture. Especially in the foreground, and you want to create and have all of the lighter tones show through, so don't try and cover it all up. Let some of the light bits shine through. That will really help with your texture. Because if we go too dark, you see, we're going to struggle with these trees, and I'll probably use this brush for tree foliage as well, to be honest. The trees will need to be near black if you go too dark with your grassy bits, but I'm probably going to end up going too dark with my grassy bits. I'm terrible at not doing what I tell you to do, because I experiment, you see, and I think, oh, maybe that'll work, and if it doesn't, then I can hide it before you lot spot it on the screen. It doesn't always work, because some of you are very eagle-eyed. So that's slightly more blue in here, just for the very, very foreground to flick up. And I'm almost certain I won't put on as many trees as there are in this picture, to keep it fairly open. I'm not going to rinse that green stipply brush. Let's put that aside for now. So it's building up though, isn't it? The trees are going to add some depth, but the shadow is what's going to start making the picture. It will hold it all together and create a lot more interest. I did a friend of mine's a pet portrait for Christmas, as a Christmas gift, for her and her husband, of their dog, and they didn't make it into town for Christmas. And then obviously with the lockdown and everything, it's just been sitting here. So we posted it off the other day, and thankfully they're really pleased. I love the picture. It's a photograph they took of their dog, so it was all a surprise. But I'll see if I can find it on my phone. But it's such a beautiful dog that I thought I've definitely got to capture this. See if I can find it. It was before. Oh gosh, I take far too many photographs. Bum 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 bum. Feels like a different world ago going through my photographs and seeing crowds of people and Christmas. There he is. So that's him. He's called Marley. I definitely want to put the trees on before we do shadow because it's going to help. However, I will be putting the foliage on before I put the shadow or tree trunks on. Thank you, Alison. Because obviously the foliage is going to be lighter than the shadow and the trunks. You can see the trunks are almost, and the branches are almost black, aren't they? Same as with the sheep. And we've got just under an hour left. So we've got enough time to do all of this. So I'm going to make yellow ochre and ultramarine. I'm going to make a really dark green for this foliage. And I know technically it isn't as dark as I'm going to make it. But it's a really good way of creating extra layers. So it's a lovely dark sludgy green anyway. You could always add a little bit of lemon yellow if you find it a bit too dark. However, you do need it dark, the darkest green that we've got so far. So yellow ochre and ultramarine. You could add other tones in it, and I'm going to use my stipply brush for this. Really load it well, and then I've got sort of foliage here and another one here. You see, you can buy really expensive foliage brushes like a Deerfoot stippler and all of these kind of things. I know Terry Harrison's got a lovely range of brushes for specific jobs. However, you can't beat an old manky brush for it. Bush thing here. But again, you have to twist. Now this is where I'm really going to struggle because I don't want to put as many in as there is in the photograph. So I'm going to be using artistic license, which is what all art is about, isn't it really? This is quite a large one here. Have I mixed up enough? Of course I haven't, so let me mix up some more. Because what I don't want to do is do what we all do, is as we're running low on colour, we eke it out with more water, and therefore it's no longer a darker colour, it becomes a light colour. So sometimes you do have to go, no, I'm going to definitely mix up some more. maybe put a hint of one just coming off the page, because I did say I don't want to do as many, and I'm not going to, but I could do little bush things though instead. That might look just as good in the foreground. Like slightly darker, gorsey tufts of grass or anything. I don't want to put the top of that one in, you see. Definitely not doing any more. I don't think. No, because I'm going to, when the shadow goes on, you see there's a shadow along the base of the wall and the sheep and on the tower. So I think I want more open space between the trees and the wall here, just to create a nicer composition. Let that dry. Just noticed my jar of water has been precariously perched on the very edge of my desk the whole lesson. They're good, these Nutella jars, because they're really well weighted and they've got a nice wide open top, and they don't knock over very easily. See how we get on. It's got to really dry though, because I lean on everything, so I don't. I know from experience I'll end up with a multicoloured hand if I'm not patient enough, and it's not like we haven't got the time. So it's starting to look a little bit more solid and in depth, but obviously with these just white windows, most of them are going to be painted grey. The white window frames, I'm going to have to use a really small brush to paint the window panes in. Yeah, it might be that the paper's too wet. What you need is really make sure your background paper's dry, Miriam, because otherwise it will just spread. You can add more as it lightens and dries. You can add more darker tones over the top and stipple that on a little bit. Yeah, your fan brush can't be too wet and your paper needs to be dry. So you want a slightly damp fan brush. Again, if it was a totally dry fan brush, all it would do is absorb the paint and not put the paint back out onto the paper. But a damp fan brush could also have the problem that it just spreads it too far. Right, I'm gonna. Do you know what? I'm gonna paint the trunks and branches, which I wouldn't normally do at this point, but I want my trees to be solid, so then I know what I'm shading when I add the shadow. And basically, it's just going to be burnt sienna, an ultramarine with my thin brush. Our shadow colour won't be this colour though, it's going to be more of a purple. I like a purple shadow. But I want this to be a very black brown, so it's going to be more ultramarine than burnt sienna. And it needs to be fluid enough. The hardest thing I think in watercolour when you're learning is knowing how much paint and how much water. Because when you want to do something fluid, you need a lot of water. But when you add water to watercolours, it also lightens the tone. So it is a bit of a skill to know exactly how much paint and water you need for various things. And frustratingly, it's really hard to teach that because everybody's going to be using different brushes and different paper, different paints. So it is something that you will have to sort of muddle through with trial and error. And these branches I'm not pushing in all the way through. I'm adding a few little lines here and there. Haven't got Nick this morning either. I'll have to check he's in the group. He should be, because he normally is. Trees out. So at the base of your trees, if you just flick down so you've got the grass in front of it, it makes a difference. To make sure the base of my tree is sturdy enough to hold up all of the branches that I've put on. twiggy bits in the foreground as well, just to, I don't want it to be this solid band of these black bits all in the midground. So if I do a few twiggy branchy bits just sticking up out of the grass. You have to think about balance a lot with painting, and sometimes you have to add an extra bit or take a bit away as the painting progresses, so you can start thinking about the balance and harmony within a picture. Which is why I never draw too many things in a scene before, because I don't like to commit fully, as I can then tweak it as I go along. Want me to zoom in, Miriam? Right, let me just quickly switch screens so I can zoom in a little bit. That's where you can see how dodgy everything is. So it's the shadows that are going to do everything now. I'm relying on them, and I will use probably some of the shadow colour at the bottom of the tree areas as well, of the foliage, to show the light is coming. Does that help, Miriam? That's all right. That's what I'm here for. I'm really thrilled. I'm still getting to grips with this sort of broadcasting software that I'm using. But I'm loving what I can do with it, even just with limited ability that I have, in that I can have several cameras set up. I've only got 2 cameras, but you can see different angles, and then I've got the reference image. I can add video, and I'm really pleased with how it is, because I don't really know what I'm doing. As you know, it's not my bag. We've always had the camera recording, so when you're in the classroom you can see it on the screen. So trying to make it all singing, all dancing for you just online, it's been a bit of a challenge, but it's been really interesting to see what can be done with a very limited budget. But I dare say, because we're never going to stop these online classes, they're going to carry on forever and ever, even when our classroom reopens next year. But we might look at moving away from Facebook next year or later this year, with using other proper platforms where you can pay per view, rather than these closed groups. I don't know. Trying to see what works best. But for an emergency fix that we had to do with hardly any notice, when we had to shut the shop, we're doing all right, I think. They work. It works well enough for now. And when I start making my millions from these videos, then we can invest into more things. Right, let me zoom back out again, because we're going to start adding a bit of shadow. I didn't realise that the bottom of the screen wasn't showing. go. It's also interesting, I've got two different cameras. They're both the same make, but one's the later version. The main camera is the later version, whereas the camera with the angle isn't. But they pick up colours totally differently. You can see the angled painting is much more yellow than my painting, and I've got to see how I can tweak the cameras on the broadcasting software. Whether I can or not, I don't know. Right, so that needs to really dry. I'll just let you know what we're doing next month. Ooh, it's an up-close sheep portrait, so that'll be really nice. A bit of texture to get the wall, and it's not just its face, it will be like just standing there, but the sheep will be as big as your hand kind of thing. So it's an up-close sheep. So that'll be really nice. We've got other loads of lessons coming up this week, but then, as I say, the free one is on the 25th of July on the shop's Facebook page. We've set up an event for it, and that is a moon gazing hare in watercolour. So that'll be quite a nice one to do. So that's later this month. So we're going to make the purple shadow colour up in a second, and then start from the tower and work our way down the wall, and then the shadow for the trees and the sheep, and that should make a huge difference to the solidity of the picture. And don't be frightened, you know, I'm always saying, aren't I, go darker, and sometimes the dark is important. Up. I'll be using my number 4 round, I think, and my stipply brush for a lot of this. So if I go with my ultramarine first, we are going to need quite a lot of this, and then a bit of cadmium red. Want it more, slightly more towards the blue side than the red side. So it's kind of an aubergine colour. I like aubergine coloured shadows, but it will depend on the time of year. When we do Christmassy ones, I tend to use either cerulean or phthalo blue with cadmium red, and that gives me a colder shadow feel, more wintry. Okay, oh, we've got the mast as well that we can put on the flagpole. I'll do that with this colour. Let's get that one. Can I do a straight line? No. Fill the windows in first, of the main windows that are not with little thin frames and things. As I say, the fiddliest bit will be in the windows, but you can just indicate them. You don't have to be exact with it, but it does make a difference to the solidity of the picture. Then I'll start thinking about the shadow on the building. So stands up here, but just loosely indicate it and not worry too much if it looks nothing like the windows that we've got. And with this is a number 1 brush. I'm just going to use it to indicate as a width for the windows. So I'll just be putting it down once and leaving a little bit of gap between them and trying to get them roughly the right size, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. I mean, it already looks better just having those in situ, and then it's just a matter of working out the balcony bit. I hate outlining stuff, but sometimes it needs it. Oh, I must have come up for air. I was holding my breath for that bit then. I'm not normally a breath holder. I'm going to loosely outline some parts of it though. Helps with the texture as well, but it might help define areas that you're struggling to define. And it just adds that little bit of structure and solidity. Might do a bit more with the balcony shadow. And with the smaller windows you could lift out parts of it once you've painted it in and it's dry, just so it gives you that slight idea of reflected light. And there are no people in this picture. Sort of, I mean there are in the photograph, you can see 1 or 2 on the top area, but it helps with scale, but that's about all. But now that feels so solid to me now, that building. Part of me would, I'm still toying with the idea of shading part of the tower. If I'm gonna have my shadows running downwards, so I might put a wash on this half. I'm gonna see how I feel as the picture and the shadow progresses, but I don't like that it's all the same tone, so I'm going to probably cheat. Right, so there's a bit of the wall shadow going in. I might use my thin brush with that lighter grey purple to just add a little bit of definition on the top stones. And I'll be doing the sheep shadow in this way, but the tree shadows I will be using the stipply brush for. And fiddling with the sheep's feet and head. And the sheep will also have to have a little bit of grey shadow on them as well. So there's lots, well, this purple shadow, there's lots of little fiddly bits. So a little line underneath them is fine for shadow. work out where the head is on this sheep. I'm going to stick it here. I think that might have been his bum, but you know, it don't matter. I'll zoom in on these in a second so you can just see how I've indicated the shadow, and then we'll look more closely. And then when the tree shadows are on, that's going to make the, you know, following the gradient of the hill and everything, it will make a big difference to it. So it's just a paler grey wash on the sheep, and then a slightly darker on the under and the right hand side, because as I say, my shadows are going to start running downwards. Let's show you the tree shadows. Again, oh, that's too runny now. And not dark enough. So yeah, I think I am going to put a wash on the side of the tower. If I zoom out, you can see the whole thing, and I think if I do a very pale purple wash on the right hand side, you can see, you can decide. I'm going to do it, and then you can go, oh no, that's not for me. I want to affect it, but not make all the colours run. clean damp brush just helps soften it in, because as I say, I hadn't planned on doing this, but it isn't until you see other things within the structure that you think actually it probably would look nicer. It's the same purple shadow colour, Miriam. I haven't put any on the trees yet either. So it's the ultramarine and cadmium red, but a little bit more diluted. Now I've zoomed out, you can probably see it's that aubergine colour again, which I've run out of since I've just done the glaze on the building. I might add slightly darker tones still within. I don't want to make it overly sunny, but equally I do want to add a little bit of depth. And interest. And I think I am going to stipple some of this onto the trees. I'm not going to see them overly, but I'm going to know that there's a bit of shadow on the foliage on the underside and right hand side. I might add a bit more shadow in the grass. Yeah, I definitely need to make stronger purple shadow up. Can't even see that I've done any of that. It's better. So it's all our ultramarine cadmium red mix. I do feel better now. There's a little bit of tone on the side of the building walls. And I might cheat. You know what I am? I am a terrible cheat in terms of composition. I might put a very grey, pale browny grey wash to create a little bit of a path coming through. Just to help create that lead through. I've added a little bit of burnt sienna to this grey colour, this purple colour, quite a lot of water. Just going to let it play around the shape so it's wider there, and then through the path, through the gate, and then just slightly a bit of a meander through. And it's these little things that really do add to the scene, even though they're not really there, but it does help with distance and depth. all these things, as always, are optional because it's your picture. And you've got the option to go, oh no, I don't like that. Or you might find it just helps enough. And I might even use a bit of this brown as a bit of dry brush just in the foreground on the left hand side to just warm things up right at the very front bottom of the picture, bottom left, and that just gives it enough variation, I think. Gosh, look at that, it's 10 to 1. But that path just takes our eye through that little gap and helps us break into the sky area and look up and circulate around the top area. So we've tweaked the composition a little bit, and I've removed some of the trees to make it brighter and lighter, so it's not all dark dominant. I don't know. I think that's all right. I think if I add any more to it, it's not going to make any difference. It'll just end up getting muddier and sludgier, which is not what the effect that I'm after. And obviously I'll be posting a photograph of this within the group under the reference photograph when we're done. But I think we are kind of done now anyway, because it's 10 to 1. You could add more dark shadows. It depends, that obviously the stronger the shadows, the brighter the sunlight will feel. But I'm not sure in my case it would work or be worth it. But I am glad I have put a purple wash on the right hand side of the building, because it makes that feel more solid now, even only subtle, because I don't want it hugely strong. And so because I've darkened that side, if you notice, I've lengthened the shadows of the trees more on the right hand side, so it does feel like there's definitely more light coming from the left rather than it just being above as it is in the photograph. And you can do, that's what's great about art, is you can tweak it a little bit to make it your own. I've really enjoyed this image today. I wasn't sure how it would go down, but it looks all right, I think, as a painting. I am fairly pleased with it. That's all right, Miriam. Have a wonderful birthday, and thank you for joining us. That's lovely. I'm gonna close now, I think. So maybe see some. I know I'll see some of you next month, but maybe I'll see you online in some of the other classes between now and then, or our free one on the 25th of July. So have a wonderful, what's left of the weekend, but have a wonderful day. The sun's gone in a bit, but you can still enjoy your Sunday. Take care, and I will see you all soon. Thank you very much. Bye bye, everyone. Bye bye.